Once upon a time, there was a man named Jordan Peterson. Then there was this channel. Ladies and gentlemen, Mercury Black.
Welcome, folks. I'm Mercury Black and I'm insane. Today, we're going to be discussing Jordan Peterson's recent podcast on Michaela Peterson, his daughter's channel. I'm forgetting what that's called. Is it just the Michaela Peterson podcast? Anyway, go check out the original source material. Um, I'm not sure how this is going to go. Me and Grizz are both grumpy today, but we realize that when you don't just act on something, you often don't get around to it later. So we decided to discuss. I think we're going to start with the issue of benzos. And Grizz, do you want to start with a clip, or do you have anything you want to say first about this?
Yeah, this thing is like an hour long, and there was this one part that he seemed like he wanted to get out. So I thought it'd be a good idea if we pulled it out and made sure that people saw at least that. So I'm gonna share that to start us off.
All right, excellent.
I don't remember I think it's one prescription either in 7 or one prescription in 9 in the United States is either for opiates or benzodiazepines. So that's obviously a huge proportion of the prescriptions. And it's very probable that someone in your family is currently taking benzodiazepines or will be prescribed them in the future for long enough to develop a dependence. Like, people need to know this. It's not good. Those drugs are for short-term treatment of stress-induced anxiety.
Or for surgery. They are used in surgery and things.
Right.
Yeah.
But as a long-term treatment, they're a complete catastrophe.
Yeah. And not everybody, there'll be the person or two that'll say, well, I took them and I got off of them.
Yeah.
And that's true. But it seems if you look at the statistics, if you're older, then it's harder. You're more likely to form a dependency, right? And maybe that's because your brain isn't as plastic. Maybe it takes just longer to heal from them.
Well, it's also true of opiates. Like, not everybody who takes opiates for a long period of time develops a pronounced dependence. There's lots of individual variability, but the risk is still extremely high.
Mm-hmm. I had people message me after the video in September saying they'd gotten off of multiple drugs, and that benzodiazepines had been the most difficult by far.
Mm-hmm.
People with experience with opiates as well, or heroin or something, said benzodiazepine was a completely different.
Well, I'd had bouts of depression before last fall, let's say, in my life, and I would have to say those were among the worst experiences of my life. But I'd have to say that after searching long and hard for something that was worse than depression, I finally discovered it in akathisia. Because depression was, remember, we talked about that, right? And
Yeah, we talk about that, right? There's other better parts I think I can try and find, but that's a good starting point, I think.
Yeah, and so I want to open with my personal opinion that I am not judgmental of what drugs somebody takes when they're good for them. And that's whether it's recreational or pharmaceutical. So, especially as a fucking lunatic who's been in an insane asylum, life is fucking hard. And that's always what I liked about Peterson's message. It wasn't life is easy, you're just stupid. Like, smile, idiot. It was, look, life's fucking hard. It can be tragedy. And that's why you don't want to make it worse. So all his 12 rules for life, his self-help, I never perceived that as him saying, look, I've mastered life. Life is easy. Follow my rules. I always took that as him saying, look, man, life's fucking hard. It's brutal to get through. These rules are helping me. And so I want to share them. And one of his rules was, people reduced his first chapter often to take your bloody pills, that's all he was saying. But I think it was the first chapter, and his point was that we don't take good enough care of ourselves. That for many of us, if our dog is sick and the vet gives us a prescription, we'll follow through on that properly. But that when we get our own antibiotics or our own medication that we know we shouldn't be taking, we don't always take it. So this is not an anti-drug message from me. This is a warning that various drugs have various dangers associated with them. And I still, well, I'm not taking pharmaceutical, well, I take a prescribed sleeping pill. Other than that, I don't take any other mood stabilizers, antidepressants, or antipsychotics anymore, although I've been on all sorts of those. I don't have any personal experience with the benzos that I remember. If I've ever been on them, I don't remember because I've been shot full of all kinds of stuff against my will. But for instance, I do know. It's like if you're watching this and you're on lithium and you're like, yeah, fuck pharmaceuticals, do not stop taking them cold turkey. It is dangerous coming off of drugs. And if you take lithium for a long period of time and then you just suddenly stop and you don't taper off right, that can induce psychosis in somebody who's never had psychosis before. So we have to be very, very careful getting off of our drugs. But also, I am not judgmental. Like, if you have found a drug, whether it's recreational or pharmaceutical, and it genuinely helps you and it doesn't make you behave badly, it's not causing other poor behavior. It's like if your family and doctor all agree that this is good for you and you agree it's good for you, then I'm glad you found something to get you through. I'm also not judgmental of the heroin addict who has ruined their life if the truth is that they would have killed themselves 6 months earlier and they're alive because they're a heroin addict. I see those as people who need help, not to be looked down on. And so, especially with all the criticism Peterson takes over every little thing he says, and the way a lot of people mocked his first rule as, oh, it's just take your bloody pills. From my perspective, it's brave of him to speak up so early because he's clearly just recovering from what he's been through and he has not fully recovered. It seems to me his motivation for doing that was because he genuinely, it seems as a combination of he cares about his audience and he wanted to give a family update, but also it appears as though he wants to help stop anyone else from having to go through what he went through. And it's amazing what fucking psychiatric drugs can do as side effects. So there's antidepressants that they're prescribed to people because their depression is too much, they can't take it. And for X percentage of people, it helps. But for a small percentage of people, it causes dramatically increased suicidal feelings. And so both recreational and pharmaceutical drugs are dangerous. And I don't know, maybe Grizz, if you have the next clip ready, we can hear more about Peterson's specific experience. But also, I know you have a different perspective than me on drugs, and I'd like to open it up to you of whatever sort of warning you want to share for people whose doctor offers them benzos.
Well, I just want to say that I saw this after I had noticed at work that a lot of people were coming in saying that they were having extra anxiety because of the what they watch
What
on the
is work
news.
for you? Grizz, you're talking as though everyone else knows, and you don't have to say specifically where you work, but what kind of place do you work?
In a doctor's office. So there are people coming in to the doctor uh, with increased anxiety because of the COVID situation as it was dictated. And so that's benzos, that they prescribe benzos for that. And I'm sure they discuss how dangerous they are when they prescribe them to everyone, but it's one of those things that they're highly addictive. And apparently, coming off the addiction can call this acanthasia thing he's talking about. Um, I don't know if this is the right clip, but when he's talking about the 1 out of 9 people get prescribed either that or opiates. Um, I thought that was an important thing to be aware of because we've had an opiate crisis already. And if he's predicting the benzo crisis before it lands, then it's a good time to call that out, I think. But I'll run another couple minutes. You want to talk to, you want me to pull out some chat before I do?
That's up to you, man. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. I'll roll with anything you throw at me.
All right, well, Lorenzo Sleestack is here, and he's glad to be hearing a Peterson update because he was concerned after the hospital thing. Bill Ricketts likes tobacco. Crazy Mode says, hello, Mercury. This channel is truly a hidden gem. Uh, Nolan and
Thank you,
Andrew
Crazy
are here
Mode.
saying hello. I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off. Davor Ivanovov is asking how you're doing. Shane's in the house. And,
And maybe to simplify chat, if you have a question you want us to respond to, if it's not just chit chat, maybe write in capital letters either Mercury or Grizz. Start it with that in all caps and make it a follow-up question. And that way Grizz knows to pull that up as something we respond to. But thanks everyone for coming. And to the how I'm doing, I'm in kind of rough shape, but I'm soldiering on. I'm tired and dealing with the depressed side of things. The voices telling you to just give up, the weight in the body, well, those of you who've had depression know the symptoms of that. So I'm dealing with that, but just trying to soldier on and make the most of it. Also, there's nothing wrong with being depressed. It's all right. It's okay to not be okay.
Meanwhile, here's these two. A little bit about depression.
Easy. It was like all of the negative emotion associated with depression, plus a very high level of anxiety, plus no positive emotion at all, plus the inability to ever relax, even for a moment. And so it was.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yes.
So watch the hell out for benzodiazepines. They're probably not your friend, or if they are, they're not your friend for very long. So,
Yeah. And one of the weird things, I was prescribed lorazepam for sleep. I didn't take it very often because I found it didn't work very well. Thank goodness. But the funny thing about them, especially at a low dose, is they don't, or they didn't for me anyway, induce any type of euphoria. So when you take an opiate, when I took the OxyContin, I didn't like it, but there was some sort of high that had to do with the pain medication. But with the lorazepam, there was just an absence of something. So I think it's probably a sneakier drug to be on,
right?
Because
I think that's partly why I didn't notice what it was doing to me too. Is that there was no immediate effect in the day of taking it. I mean, I stopped having that terrible reaction that we attributed to food. And so that eliminated the insomnia and the anxiety, but there was no noticeable effect from the benzodiazepines. And so I just never paid any attention to them. It never occurred to me that they could be causing me serious long-term damage.
you'd also taken SSRIs for over a decade.
Yes,
so it's
and
like
they were very
antidepressant,
helpful.
anti-anxiety medication. It turns
Yes.
out those are not the same medications
Well,
at
and
all.
I even knew that to some degree because I knew that SSRIs, the antidepressants, were much more effective long-term treatments for panic disorder than benzodiazepines. You know, but it's quite shocking to me actually that I didn't know, despite my professional specialty, that I had no idea how catastrophic benzodiazepine use could be. Anyways,
well, psychology.
Surprise, Mark, you're back on.
Oh, okay. Surprise. All right. So I didn't catch all of that because I didn't get a screen share, but I caught some of it on YouTube. What do you have to say about that, Grizz, from your perspective, because you see what's going on more in the medical community at the moment than I do?
I'm very, very jaded. It's not, I don't feel comfortable talking about it because I'll trigger people. But to me, I go to work at a place where the drug dealers get to wear white coats and get well compensated for giving you pills. Um, so they'll be happy to prescribe you. Like the the people who sell pills often provide lunch for the establishment and that sort of thing. So be don't go in there unless you really need to, is my thing as far as any pills, because they're happy to have a lifelong customer.
Now, I've noticed that for myself from the patient side, that they're very happy to keep prescribing drugs on and on and on. It can be very difficult to say, I want to get off some of my drugs, or I want to try to find a way to deal with my mental illness without drugs. Like, I want to taper off, I want to, but there's been plenty of times where I've been talking to a psychiatrist about how things are steadily progressing for me. And they're all, that's good, but why don't we try some more drugs? Because you're doing a bit better, each so period of time. What if, taking clonazepam will help? What if this will help? And for me, I had so many years where the majority of the drugs I was given had adverse side effects. Like for me, even with sleeping pills, this is the kind of sleeping pills I take now, and I think it's Restoril. That's the fourth or fifth sleeping pill prescription I tried, because both my psychiatrists agreed that I should have a sleeping pill to use when I can't sleep, but the first three or four caused other side effects. And yeah, I won't even bother going into it, but taking the first three or four, yes, they help me sleep, but they would cause other side effects. And with them, the doctors will also push you to, well, try it for a couple months, see if the side effects go away. And I found for me, the side effects would get milder after a couple months on some of them it wouldn't change. And I think the last time I changed, I think I said to the doctor, like, no, I'm not giving this one a couple more fucking months. Give me something else. And when I finally got Restoril, I don't notice any bad side effects for myself from it. I know it's like dependency forming, so I don't take it every night. I've had it prescribed to me now for, I bet you, at least 5 years. And I've never formed a dependency. I take it responsibly. I keep track of how often I've taken it. I don't take it too much. But I had to go through that route of, and when I wanted to get off of, because the last drug that I was on was a mood stabilizer. And it was one that I put up with for a couple of years because I didn't know if it was doing anything helpful at all. But it also didn't cause any side effects I could notice. It seemed that when I took that mood stabilizer, it didn't change shit. Except, no, sorry, I wondered if it fucked with my sleeping a little. So even though when I talked to the doctor about it, he said, no, it doesn't fuck with your sleeping. I was like, I think it does. So I started taking my daily dose all at once in the morning for a while, because it was a morning in bed thing. And then I noticed I slept better. So, and I was always honest with my psychiatrist. No, I'm just taking it in the morning because that way I can sleep. So when I was only taking it in the morning, I noticed no adverse side effects, but I also didn't know if it was helpful. After years of learning meditation and such, I told the doctor, like, look, I'm not sure if this ever helped. And I've noticed that the days I forget to take it, I wonder if I'm doing a bit better. So I want to wean off this responsibly. And the psychiatrist didn't listen to me. He told me, no, don't, give it another year. And I was very clear with him, no, I'm not giving it another year. I want your advice. And when he wouldn't give me advice on how to taper off of it, I told him I would look up how to on my own. He said, don't do that. And I went and looked up. And actually, the Icarus Project had resources for this. So I hope the publications are still out there. I don't remember what it's called, but they had a book that was just about this: how to responsibly wean yourself off a psychiatric drug. And it listed each kind of drug. And so for me, I spent a full year weaning myself down properly off my mood stabilizer. Like first taking 3/4 for a couple months, then half, then a quarter. But for me now, I've been off of pharmaceuticals other than my sleeping pills. and my melatonin, which isn't a pharmaceutical, it's an over-the-counter sleep aid supplement. Other than that, I don't take any other drugs, but I will admit they're very soft on telling you the side effects, and they really push, like, try more drugs, give it some time. And so it doesn't seem to me the system's being fully responsible there.
Well, if you think about it, it's like going to a hardware. It's like you're going to a hammer store, telling them you have a nail, because that's what their medicine. That's what they do. It's like we find the pills that match your problem. And I don't know. I think it's because we all maybe watched Little House on the Prairie growing up or something. Back, but it seems like doctors used to be more about keeping you healthy, and now it's something different. Um, but like these things, because it's coming from your doctor, you think it's safe. I mean,
Yep.
it's because they train us. Ask your doctor. Ask your doctor. Ask your doctor if the pill we make is right for you. So,
Just like because big corporations are doing it, we think it's safe to destroy the environment like this. We're doing lots of very dangerous things because our authorities are telling us it's okay. And just because the authority tells you it's okay doesn't mean it is.
and like he's going into with the anti-anxiety medication, the pill there is interacting with your nervous system, like the thing that runs through every part of your body. And if like you start getting like his acantha, I'm not even gonna try and say it. His problem, the symptom he had as part of his withdrawal was like electric shocks because his nervous system had been altered. So I don't know. It
And you
seems
can see that, like, Peterson is, I think, a formidable individual. Like, I think he's had a lot of serious difficulties to deal with in his life. And if those pills can do that to him, but also, like, I think when we look at Peterson, we can take a moment to notice, like, fuck, this isn't just his family's problem. With Peterson, we can see, like, if we'd given him a better support system, like, as in the upper system was improved, we might have gotten more content out of Peterson. His next book might be done. And so we can see okay, we're allowing the pharmaceutical companies to profit at the expense of we're losing productivity of our fellow men. And we don't know who else we've lost productivity from. We don't know what great engineer had an anxiety problem and got prescribed benzos because he wasn't famous yet. We don't know what fucking construction worker, who's that guy on the job who does 90% of the work. Like, we don't know what construction company's running more inefficiently because some guy or gal or other has been prescribed something that knocks them off the table. We have better ways to treat people. And fucking some of these schizophrenics we walk by in the back alleys, it's not just about how sad that is for them. It's about some schizophrenics have developed mathematical formulas that progress civilization. Some schizophrenics have written beautiful music or incredible novels. We don't know what we threw away when we walk by homeless people who are schizophrenic in the gutter. We don't know what we're throwing away right now with all the people killing themselves, what they might have done if we were there to get them through it. And we don't know how many people are in hospitals or at home right now dealing with bullshit side effects that we all could have avoided. And we don't know what they'd be contributing to society if we'd given them a better support system. Which is why we're doing what we can here on Sorting Myself Out too, because I agree with Daniel Schmockenberger or whatever the fuck his name is, that the answer here isn't we got to fix the top and fix it top down. It's not we got to go grassroots and fix it from the bottom up. It's we need the scumbags in the gutter working bottom up, and we need the top working top down. We've all got to work together here. And so if the system's not going to do PSAs about benzos, then we've got to do it for our family and friends, for our communities. If the system's not able to handle all the people who are suicidal, we've got to do what we can to reach out to the people in our lives, in our communities, to support them. And maybe we can work like symbiotically here, where if some of us idiots on the bottom take a bit more responsibility for ourselves and help each other, we can ease the pressure in the system. Like we can keep a couple people from going fully psychotic, so the system doesn't have to deal with that. And if enough people at the bottom work together to lighten the load on the system, and if at the top they do the same thing, they say, look, we've got to start being responsible. We can't profit at the expense of humanity anymore. This is going exponential. We're going to destroy the world. We can work from both angles. And if the top improves, they can release the pressure on the bottom. If the system can sort shit out, they can help us relieve some of the pressure on the poor people, the mentally ill. But also,
Well,
if the poor people and the mentally ill can relieve some of the pressure for the upper system. And again, it's both sides have to start aiming at the good.
I'm to the point I can't worry about the top system. I just got to worry about where I'm at.
Exactly. But I was just showing that, and that's where I'm focusing too, is I'm also not worried about fixing the top. That's someone else's job.
Because
That's
if they don't fix themselves, us learning to be here for each other and survive whatever is anyway is is still the best path.
yes, and that's always true. Even when you're in a relationship where you're like, look, me and you both need to improve here. You don't say to yourself, well, I'm only going to improve if they do. Because if you just focus on what's under your control and you take care of it, then if the other side does too, hooray, everyone wins. But if the other side doesn't, you're still better off to have cleaned your work. You're still better off to have taken care of yourself. So if we in the gutter form a support system, then if the top fixes itself at the same time and more gutter people work together, hooray, we usher in a utopia. But if the top's going to go corrupt and we're going to go through an apocalypse, then at least the gutter's got a good support system, and we will have an easier time as society collapses if we're supporting each other.
I got to bring in something from the chat just because it's so great. But shout out to Patty J, Daniel, and Sally for being here. Uh, Sally says, I like it. Time for the kidneys in the body of Christ to get dealing with the piss.
Yeah, I'm here to filter piss.
So I thought that was great. Um, yeah, I think, and part of what is going on is like, even if your room's not clean yet, you can still listen to me and be there for somebody else. Be a set of ears.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Peterson's rule is specifically clean your room before you criticize the world. He doesn't say clean your room before you help a friend. He doesn't say clean your room before you volunteer at a soup shelter. He was saying clean your room before you protest and riot. You know what I mean? But yeah, you'd be surprised what the fuck damage people can do if we give them the opportunity, and what like some disabled people can do. It's just our incentive system right now doesn't, there's no way to capitalize on a depressed person being there for another depressed person. That's not incentivized by the system, but that's incredibly beneficial for humanity. If we can cry on each other's shoulders, that helps. And also, even if you're a disaster in 9 out of 10 areas, but you're an expert on something small, if you know how to fix a fucking car and nothing else, help your neighbors with their cars. And I hopefully, and to those neighbors, I would say, help that mechanic with the things he's not good at. Because that's the way we used to work in tribes and in small villages, is we used to lean on each other because the world used to be dangerous enough that it had to be humanity against the world. We used to have that outer threat, like of Ronald Reagan saying, I imagine how we'd be united if we had an alien threat. We used to have that. It was the night. It was the tigers. It was the wolves. It was starvation. We knew we had to cooperate. But then we conquered all that shit, like idiot gods, like demented fucking lowercase g gods. We conquered the world. And so now our only problem is ourselves. And so we don't lean on each other anymore. Like it used to be, it was a survival crisis to have no relationships. Now it's fine. You can click everything online. You can, that's a weird safety net that's very fragile and is not the majority of human experience. For the majority of human experience, if you didn't have family or friends, you would have to be an extremely powerful individual, emotionally and psychologically. You would have to be in tune with your environment, and you would have to know how to survive on your own. I would be shocked if anyone listening right now knows how to survive on their own. I don't think any of us could, because like if you were just dropped off, like that TV show Naked and Afraid, I don't think any of us would make it. We need each other here. And we put up a fragile fucking house of cards that we're all leaning on, instead of actually leaning on each other the way we used to in family and tribes. I don't remember how that rant started. How far off topic did I get, Grizz?
Oh, I don't think you wandered off topic at all. I thought it was so good I wanted to back out of the scene and,
Oh, okay. For a minute there, my brain went like, "Ah, what the fuck am I doing?"
No, that was a good that was a good rant. It was I like the we don't need each other anymore. I was thinking about when you were going off about that. I was thinking about how we used to gather around the fire and share stories, and now we just gather in our homes around black mirrors. And
I recently had someone say something very interesting about that to me, and so I'm going to keep the person anonymous because it was like a private conversation, but I'll share the idea, and I just want to give credit. It wasn't me. What they were saying was a fundamental tipping point in our development, not even just as a society, but their theory was even as a family unit. The way they saw it was when we were on our own, when it was me and my mate, I'm hunting rabbits or fish, and she's gathering for just us. This person's theory was that at that point, we actually probably weren't bonded well with our mates, that we spent all day surviving, and that probably at night, the male raped the female or was abusive, that there was not the love and intimacy, and that when we encountered each other, it was very gruff. But their theory was once we stepped up to hunting larger game, and they said that so that instead of you hunting alone, and you were hunting with 6 other men at the time, and that those 6 or 7 women would work together throughout the day, gathering the berries and such, taking care of the children. The men would go off and hunt. But here's what they thought was the pivotal difference. It wasn't, their focus wasn't even on how working as a team to hunt helped us and working as a team to raise our children. Their point was that once we brought back large game like a deer and all the women and children came back, that suddenly there was a period of about an hour where we were cooking food. Because their theory was also that when we were doing the small game, we may not have been cooking as much, like eating raw fish and such. But that once we were cooking large game, it meant everyone worked all day. But then at the end of the day, everyone brought their stuff together, you put the food on to roast, and then everyone just has to sit and wait for an hour. And their theory was that that was pivotal, because sitting and waiting to eat together is when we would begin sharing. That's when it became, what did you do? How are you thinking? How are you feeling? And that by sharing our thoughts with each other for an hour a day while the food cooked, and probably especially when after that it was rewarded with the ritual of sharing meat, but also that your brain was, the neuroplasticity was rewarded with protein. That, hey, when I sit and talk for an hour, I get protein after. We survived better, but also that we began, it's that idea of mutually disclosing intimate details to each other is how we form love. It's how you fall in love, is sharing stories about yourself, but it's also how you form friendship love. And their theory was that it was hunting large game and cooking it together that was a really pivotal point, and that at that point, their theory was we started caring more about our wives. That our wives weren't just this creature that you saw in the morning and then you saw at night. That suddenly it was a creature with thoughts and feelings like you had. And that was pivotal for society. again, I just suddenly went blank. Why did I start on that? I don't know where that came from.
Well, it doesn't really matter where it came from. But does that mean that like our peak civilization was what, like 1950?
No, what it means is all of this is an alchemical process where we're still improving, and the peak civilization will be as different to what we are now as we are different to the people 10,000 years ago. These are all stages we have to develop to get to the next stage. And that's where, again, I wish I knew how to pronounce the guy's last name, but that Daniel guy who seems to be part of the intellectual deep web, and the bottom of his beard is white and the rest is black from like his lips up. He uses the metaphor of like right now, obviously, humanity's destroying itself. And you can't see how we're going to get out of it. Like he says, if you look at the number of things, like how close we are to the coral collapsing, how close we are to forests, such and such, that there's so many environmental disasters on tipping points. Plus, we're moving exponentially. Plus, we're not getting any wiser and we're getting more and more powerful. And he equates it to when you look at a bunch of caterpillars, if you watch the caterpillars come out in the spring, and you didn't know there was such a thing as a butterfly, you would say, oh my God, these caterpillars are going to destroy themselves. They eat ravenously, they eat everything, they don't pollinate, they don't feed back into shit, especially poisonous caterpillars. Nobody's eating them. They're growing at a ridiculous rate. They're going to eat all the food in the world and wipe themselves out, is what you think. But at a certain point, and it does that. The caterpillar eats too fucking much until its blood chemistry becomes rich enough. Then it triggers a chrysalis phase. And the caterpillar doesn't get thinner and grow wings. The caterpillar dissolves. It's like Solvay and Coagula in alchemy. The caterpillar dissolves. Then it puts itself back together into a butterfly. Now, the butterfly emerges and spends its life pollinating. It returns, and throughout the life cycle, it returns everything back to the system. But his point is, you couldn't predict the butterfly phase if you were watching the caterpillar. He says what we need is the butterfly phase. And you can't predict that now. We've lived through caterpillar. And his other point is when you look.
I don't know. Are we neck deep in caterpillar? Are we just going to be the goop and whatever survives is going to be the thing? Because it feels like it mostly.
Well, we're the goop right now.
Yeah.
We're in goop phase. We're not even, or no, fuck. It's like half of us are caterpillars and some of us are goop. But like, no, we're still devoured. We're in the phase where we're still wiping out the forests. We're still acting on this fuck. Yeah, no. We're like, we as in the majority of humanity, or we're eating the world right now. But he also points out, and it's what I said in my own crazy way when I hosted the movie night of The Day the Earth Stood Still. I chose to watch the remake, even though I kind of like the original better. But it's because the remake really punched the point of it is only on the precipice of disaster that we can change. And so Daniel's, again, a great metaphor, is a chicken and an egg, or any bird and an egg, that it consumes that yolk. And if you just knew about the egg phase, you would say, shit, it's going to kill itself. It's eating all its food too quickly. And when it finally consumes all of its egg yolk, if for some reason there's something wrong with that chick and it can't get out of the egg, it will die. So chicks emerge at the point where they will die if they stay in any longer. But it's also true that they would die if they were born any earlier. And I think he might even equate it to humans. Like, the mother will die if the baby stays in any longer, but the baby will die if the baby comes out any sooner. It's a tipping point. And that these things, that whether or not this apocalypse is an Armageddon, a destruction of humanity, or an ushering of a golden age, we don't know yet. But it seems that the golden ages only happen on the precipice of disaster. It can't happen a moment later, but also it can't happen a moment sooner.
And while being on the precipice of disaster might cause you a little anxiety, That doesn't mean it's worth it to start on benzos. Ta-da! See how I pulled that all back together nicely?
For a minute, I forgot we were streaming until you did that.
I know.
No, thanks for the reminder. I'm just looking at a Zoom screen. And yeah, which reminds me of the video. Can we play the clip I liked in the video where Peterson addressed what he said on Joe Rogan?
Of course, because
You know where that is?
we have that timestamp completely prepared. Here, let me share the screen with you.
Yeah, do I get to hear this one?
For mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You get to be in the clip now. You're on the edge of the screen now. I think it is at, what do you think, 16:39 probably, right?
Fuck, I don't know. Sure.
No,
Let's try that.
did they do it pretty early?
Of people
Yeah, I think
respond,
it was, yeah, it was early.
telling how horrible benzodiazepine withdrawal could be, how they couldn't work, how they were pacing around their backyards for a year. And they basically said, just keep him alive, make sure he stays alive.
The psychiatrists that I spoke with said, you know, when I asked them how long the akathisia was likely to last, they said, well, it could be 2 years. And I thought, no one could live like this for 2 years. It's like, you can't live for 2 years if you're being constantly prodded with something excruciatingly painful on a moment-to-moment basis. It's just not, and there's no escape, there's no relief. That's just not.
That's not the spot. But 2 more V's said hi.
That is not the spot. Hi, 2 more V's. Everyone check. Well, if you like music and you like Jordan Peterson or you like Jonathan Pajot, check out 2 more V's channel. Great music.
Yeah, I will find that spot. You ramble on about something.
Well, let's play. Can we play? Yeah, we have permission to use 2 more V's music, by the way. Thank you, 2 more V's. Let's listen to his Jonathan Pajot Pentecost song together. We'll all just enjoy some music, and then we'll jump back into our nonsense ramblings.
Fair enough. Let me find that. Ramble while I do it.
Okay. Well, fuck. What the fuck do I say now? Okay. Also, I know Tarot for Self Knowledge was here, and they're putting out good videos. So, if you like tarot, check out Tarot for Self Knowledge. I know Andrea at the Bangs has a podcast. The next one she's putting out, she's excited about. She said it was a really good conversation. So if you're not, I forget the name, it was Joel somebody she talked to. But if you're not subscribed to Andrea at the Bangs and you want to see the conversation she's excited about, go subscribe to her channel. Are we close enough to having 2 more V's Pentecost video? Or do I have to find other things to plug? Do the self-authoring program. And thank you to Jordan Peterson and Michaela Peterson for this podcast. Definitely check out the source material and support what they're doing by self-authoring. Oh, and Kemet Bailey, I'm not sure if he still runs it, but he had this awesome self-authoring collaboration group on Facebook. If that's still going, that's something to check out. Who else wants an advertisement? Jesus is always there when you're lonely. Oh, they can't hear you? Okay. All right, yeah, so you're still looking. I wanted to hear the Pentecost one because I've been listening to. Well, I'll find you the Pentecost one. I'll put the link. So I'll keep rambling for a minute. I'll give you the link. So sorry, I should have done it that way because I know the video I want. All right, so I was going to advertise Jesus next. If the system's letting you down and you don't want to talk to me and you've got no doctor, Jesus is always there, and he doesn't advertise directly, but that doesn't cost nothing. And if someone's trying to sell you access, that's a scam. Shit, what else do I say? It's harder while I'm also trying to look something up. Yeah, oh, you're going to beat me to it when I'm like so close to getting it? Oh, and okay, I know what to say about this because this is a neat little fact that I didn't know until I was talking to 2 more V's. So he samples, yeah, it's the icon of Pentecost. So obviously there's samples of Jonathan Pajot singing, Jonathan Pajot speaking. But the singing you hear in the background, it's not like a clip from something. He didn't sample that. If I'm not mistaken, that's two more V's and Jonathan Pajot singing. And I'm certain it's Jonathan Pajot. I just don't know if it's just him and two more V's, if there's a third voice. But like, I'm not sure if it's credited in the description, but that's Jonathan Pajot singing as well in this song. Are we ready to roll it?
If we look at the image, we see the icons are seated in an arch, which is a proxy of the church itself. The icon of Pentecost is one of those icons which, although it does represent an event in the Bible, it represents it in a manner that goes beyond the event and becomes a permanent image of how the church exists in the world. And the hint that this is the case is that although St. Paul was not there at the event in the Bible, he is represented in this icon. And here St. Peter and St. Paul are represented together as the pillars of the church, as the left hand and right hand of Christ. Above the apostles is the holy fire which descends on them. This fire separates into 12, just as the apostles themselves each acquired tongues of fire, tongues which speak in a manner that can reveal Christ through multiplicity and be heard by all men. And then down in the bottom of the icon is the door which leads outside the upper room. It is the door which leads out into the outer darkness. And in the door is represented the allegorical figure of the cosmos itself, which holds the scrolls, the fully manifest form of the 12 traditions issued by the one fire, the one church whose unity is preserved in its multiplicity. And of course, the door of Pentecost is the door of the church itself. The church considered at all levels of interpretation that we can understand that statement. It's both the door of the church in the sense of the cosmic body of Christ, but it's also the door on the building of your local church. The door on the building of your local church. The door on the building of your local church. The door which leads out of the nave of the narthex into the chaotic outside. Now, in earlier traditions of the Pentecost, what was represented in the door was not the synthetic image of cosmos. And the very earliest images that I could find in this form of Pentecost, they all come from right after iconoclasm, and they represent an empty door. But very soon in the door was represented a crowd of foreigners, all with different hats and different clothing and different shades of skin color. This is one of my favorite versions from a Serbian monastery. And here the door of Pentecost is actually a window which leads outside of the church. And the foreigners appear coming towards the church from the edge on the sides. On the sides. On the sides. And the foreigners appear coming towards the church from the edge on the sides. There's a tradition from Armenia which portrays a monster in the door of Pentecost. The monster is either a dog-headed man, a cynocephalus, or else it is truly an unnameable monster, a kind of chaotic being with a dog face growing behind its head. This was the image that I chose as the first slide of my presentation. Now, the first time I saw this image, I came across it in a book, and I was startled beyond belief. I mean, I guess you can imagine. But as I began to understand the image of Pentecost, I realized to what extent this is a testimony to the totality of what Christianity is meant to be. The true possibility of God being all in all. The true possibility of God being all in all. The true possibility of God being all in all.
Okay, was that enough time? Do we have the clip of Peterson talking about what he said on Rogan, or am I supposed to ramble, or do you have something to say?
Oddly enough, I was busy watching that and did not find you your magic clip, so please continue.
Okay, do you have something to get me started? Okay, wait, I'll start by setting it up the clip, or does it explain itself?
Well,
Fuck it, I'll set it up a bit of why I was glad it was in it. Because when Peterson was on Rogan once, he talked about how I believe, it's been a long time since I've watched the Rogan thing, but if I'm not misremembering, Peterson was talking about the month leading up to his first discussion with Sam Harris, and how a reaction to fucking sulfides or something had made it so that he couldn't sleep for a month. And a bunch of people jumped on that after and were like, first of all, he's fucking trying to explain why he couldn't handle Sam Harris's intellect. And second of all, he makes a big deal about telling the truth, and he's obviously lying because it's impossible to stay awake for a month. And as much as I don't look at social media much, so I don't see much of all the bickering we do with each other, I did notice that among the very active and aggressive anti-Jordan Peterson people, that was often a thing I saw them quoting, was like, look, he said he didn't sleep for a month. That's scientifically impossible. So your guy is obviously a fucking liar. All right, let's find out what Peterson has to say to that.
no, I think I might have it, but it might not be the right part, so, you know.
Well, we'll find out.
But I was freezing cold for about a month. I couldn't get warm no matter how much I wore. I couldn't stand up without fainting. I couldn't sleep. I don't think I slept at all for something on the order of 3 weeks.
Yeah, people like you went on Joe Rogan and talked about a sulfite reaction you had and how you didn't sleep, and people commented that, oh, it's not possible to stay awake for that long. But if you actually look into sodium metabisulfite allergies, the symptoms that we experienced aren't unheard of. There are papers.
Well, it's also impossible to stay awake voluntarily that long. That's not the same as not being able to sleep. Those are very, very different things. Whatever. It's possible that when I was laying there thinking I wasn't sleeping, that now and then I drifted off and would wake up and not notice. I mean, I can't eliminate that as a possibility, but I can certainly tell you that I slept little enough so that it was exceedingly unpleasant. It's a very long time to stay awake. And when we went back to Toronto, our family physician prescribed benzodiazepines, which are often used as a sleeping aid and an anti-anxiety medication, and something called Zopiclone, Imovane. And I hardly took the Imovane at all, maybe 4 or 5 times. But I took the benzodiazepine the way that it was prescribed, twice a day, 0.25 milligrams. And that seemed to bring the symptoms to a pretty rapid halt, which is also part of the reason I didn't need the Imavane. And then there were so many other things going on around me at that time that I never really thought about it again. You know, I thought that it was a relatively harmless drug, and I was taking it in a prescribed fashion at not too high a dose. And I developed symptoms that I now recognized were associated with its use. Weakness on my left side, and like a feeling of detachment from people around me, people I loved, some decrease in the ability to experience joy.
I found this part really interesting when he was talking about this symptomatology, because like that's how I am. So like it's something naturally about my biochemistry is apparently very similar to being on benzo.
Or is it the benzos or the benzo withdrawal that you have the symptoms of?
No, this is before he's in withdrawal. So
Okay, so someone's slipping you benzos,
I don't know. I think my
or are you
body
just
might.
picking it up from working in a doctor's office, like you're absorbing the tiny particles through your pores
I
from
think
being
I'm just
around
that mellow,
medication?
man. I think I am just that mellow. But that was the sleeping clip you wanted. Did you want to run any more of that? Or are we done?
Fuck, I don't remember where that ended, but I guess we ran enough that I can give my follow up to it. Because that was one thing I found that in some private sessions, people would ask me about Peterson. They would say, like, what about the fact that he lied on Rogan? Or do you think that's a lie? Some people would ask me. And from my experience during my second cycle, when I went manic, when I was fully psychotic, I wanted to fucking sleep. I couldn't. Well, I mean, there were times where I wanted to be that hyper awake, but I got to where, because it had been months of sleeping just a few hours a week, and it just kept tapering. It's like it starts with you're sleeping 6 hours a night, then 4, then you're sleeping 2 hours a night. And I mean, like for weeks at a time. And then, a couple weeks of sleeping 2 hours a night, then you're sleeping 1 hour a night, then you're sleeping 1 hour every other day. And at the end, for like the last month, I can remember like sitting there and fucking like it feels like there's an engine going too fast. I can smell the fucking smoke. Wires are frying, sparks are going off. It hurts. Like it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. And I just want to go to sleep. And I would lie down, and I got very obsessive over how much I could sleep. But I would lie down, fall asleep, wake up in under 2 minutes. And I'm full of fucking energy. And I'm like, fuck, like these little micro sleeps, and would just snap right back awake. Now, I wasn't like Peterson, where it sounds like he would lie in bed for 8 hours, even if he wasn't sleeping. I wouldn't do that shit. If I couldn't sleep, I'd get up and run around fucking doing all kinds of crazy shit. Like I ran around destroying my world instead of just lying still and waiting. But I could easily understand how if he just lay in bed for 8 hours, he could be having micro sleeps that he wasn't even aware of. But also just what they say about how long a person can stay alive without sleeping. They're talking your average person. Odd states, you'd be shocked what a person can go through. Or look at what weird fucking fakirs and gurus can do with their bodies that other people can't do. Yeah, and I agree with him. It's not possible to stay awake for a month, but it is possible. And sure, you're probably being a little hyperbolic, but it is possible and like fair to say, look, I didn't sleep for a month, because sleeping under 10 minutes a day. And yeah, anyway, just from my own experience, it's like the way he said it on Rogan was, if anything, slightly hyperbolic, but it definitely wasn't like an attempt at dishonesty from my perspective. I have no problem believing Peterson about that, because I've been through something not similar in many, many ways, but it did have an overlapping symptom of the not being able to sleep.
Fair enough.
Did that make sense?
Yeah. Are the chipmunks requiring your attention?
Well, the chipmunk's out there, and the mother crow's feeding her babies.
I think
But they're getting along just fine.
so long as the babies get fed. This is an hour. I think people are probably getting bored of us by now, right?
I don't know, but are you bored of us right now?
Me, yeah, totally, totally. Um,
Yeah, I think I'm also bored of us right now.
so let me pop on so I can say goodbye. Thanks for coming,
Just
everybody.
unless anyone wrote a comment with the caps like we asked them to, is there a question that has like one of our names in all caps at the beginning?
Yes, but it's tarot for self-knowledge trying to get me to go into conspiracies. So
Oh, okay,
I
let's address that on a D live sometime.
yeah, I'm like not this stream, bro. But yeah, I
Yeah,
can.
not
You
this
can't
stream.
speak the truth on YouTube. Trying to entrap me. That's entrapment. I'm out of here. You should say
So
goodbye too.
will we give Tarot for Self Knowledge a personal invite when we do a D live together sometime?
Absolutely.
All right. And so thank you everyone for coming. I hope that nonsense was of some use to you.
Stopping the stream.